Being that it's 9 o'clock, Thursday, January 5th, we're going to start the Personnel and Finance Committee with public comments, item 1. And we need to hear the owl speak. Get the recording started. You're recording?
It is recording.
Okay. You want to check to see if we've got any public comments on Zoom? No, we have any public comments in the room? Waiting. Anybody wish to speak? The third time, anybody wish to speak? All right, we'll close public comments. We're on item 2, which is the approval of minutes. David?
Second.
Thank you. I'm gonna take a vote. Aye. Aye, it's 5. Okay. The third item is the presentation and discussion of the compensation study by McGrath Human Services. Are they here?
Yes, Dr. McGrath is appearing by Zoom. I'd like to introduce Dr. Victoria McGrath. She's the principal for McGrath Human Resources Group. Victoria, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you. Ready?
Meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll be there in person, I believe, the middle of
Just
this
a minute,
month.
we can't hear you.
Okay.
Unmute. It's
Can you hear me now?
Are you muted on your end, Victoria?
No, I am not. So I can hear you.
Oh, all right. Now try.
Can you hear me now?
No. Maybe speakers? Is this the speaker?
speakers.
I'll go check with IT. Okay.
Gotta love technology.
The 3 dots beside her name. Let's see if maybe. the spot, place down when someone joins our link now. That's not good.
Your light's not on. On her end.
Try once more, Victoria.
I can try. How's that sound? Got me?
There we go.
All right. Ready to go?
Thank you.
I don't have a formal presentation, but I just wanted to kind of give everybody an update of where we are. In the year of 2022, we did collect external market data. Unfortunately, that took us a little longer than we had anticipated, just because there's a number of compensation studies being done in the state of Wisconsin. And so everybody's being inundated with surveys. So what we ended up doing, which is a positive as well as a negative, is a lot of the folks did what we call the time saver method, where they just gave us their salary spreadsheets, they gave us their benefit information, they gave us their incumbent data, and then we had to sift through all of that to try to find the matches to similar types of positions within the county. So the positive of that is we can get a lot more job titles information on them than we can from a survey, because you're limited to how many, positions people will respond to. But obviously it takes us a little bit longer in order to wade through all that information, because everybody doesn't have just one salary schedule. So some places we're waiting through 2, 3, 4 different salary schedules, trying to find the right positions, and then going back and going through their websites for any type of job description so we can see if the matches are similar. So I'm going to show just a couple portions of a report that's in process, but you have to give me the right to share the screen. It's just a few things that are what we found so far. We are in the process of, we have updated the salary schedule, and yesterday and the rest of today, we are meeting with department directors in which to go through that information and make sure, do we have any types of issues or concerns with placements. And I think what we found is kind of interesting. And the first thing is this, is if I look at your minimum salary schedule to the actual paper minimum salary schedule of other entities around you, there really isn't a problem. Your minimums are great compared to other minimums. However, what we're not seeing in here is that the vast preponderance of the organizations and municipalities in your area are not hiring at the minimum. They have already determined that their minimums are insufficient, and so therefore they're hiring higher than the minimum, and that's something that we cannot capture. You, on the other hand, are hiring folks closer to the minimum. And the big issue that you have here is not so much your salary schedule, although we are making adjustments to your salary schedule, the 2023. The biggest issue is back in 2016, when we did the initial study, we recommended a couple things. One of them was that there needs to be 2 increases per year. Number one, there needs to be the increase to the salary schedule, which you are doing, but you're not giving that same corresponding increase to employees. The second increase is then given them as your merit or your performance reward or whatever you want to call it. And because you're not giving those 2 increases, your employees are barely moving through the salary schedule. So when I look at where your incumbents are in relationship to your salary schedule, we have almost half of your employees that are at or below the control point. And the control point is at the 50th percentile. So all these folks have not yet reached the control point, which means the average market rate. Average market rate means within 3 to 5 years, you should be at that number because you're fully capable and competent of doing the job. So the combination of not doing the 2 increases is definitely hurting your employees. In fact, I do have another example here where if your salary schedule is increasing by 2.5% per year, it's really only resulting in a 1% increase for your employees, but the market's going up by 2.5%. So even if I've been here for 19 years, I'm still not getting to that control point. The second thing that was recommended back in the 2016 study is that when you start a salary schedule, there's always a cost to it. And the cost to the salary schedule in your case is to get people to the minimum of the salary schedule. That ate up whatever money you had. Plus, in addition to that, back in 2016, if I understand HR correctly, money wasn't budgeted for the study. So it took a couple of years to implement. That's not necessarily an issue because necessarily you don't always have enough money in which to implement everything all at once. But the second recommendation is once you got everybody on the schedule, what you should be doing is putting a plan in place that starts moving longer tenured employees further within the salary range, so that by the time I'm 5 years, I'm around the control point. By the time I'm 8 to 10 years, I'm around the 3rd quartile. If I'm beyond 10 years, I'm within the 4th quartile. And that did not happen as well. So as a result of it, you've got all of your employees squished in between the 1st quartile and the control point. So you've got these very nice hiring ranges that you can't use because all of your current employees are stuck in that area. So the goal of what we're doing now is two things. Number one, making sure that your salary ranges are competitive. And by doing that, one of the easiest ways to do that is to change the percentages between pay grades. By doing that, you're not moving a lot of positions around. Instead, you're readjusting those pay ranges to be more competitive. And for almost 90% of the positions that are considered to be below market, based upon the external data, we are able to fix them and move them into a more competitive salary range and not have to adjust positions. There's a handful of positions that are going to be changing pay grades. And so we are working with department directors to make sure, does that make sense? What I haven't done yet, and I'm waiting for human resources to give me your 2023 salary data, is to see, okay, now that I've adjusted these ranges, where are people falling? Are we again spending too much money, putting everybody to the minimum and not using that money wisely and moving some of your longer tenured employees further within the salary range? So I've made it very clear to every department director that we've talked to, these minimums might change. They might go down because I don't want to spend all the money getting people just to the salary schedule and not cleaning up your major problem, which is getting folks further in the salary range based upon their date and position. We're not using date of hire, we're trying to use date and position. So if I've been I know it's not a part of the study, the sheriff's not, but we'll use that as example. I started as a sheriff's deputy and then I became a sergeant and then I became a lieutenant. And now I'm a captain. I'm going to look at how long they've been a captain, not necessarily how long they have been within the county. And so this weekend, I will be doing that analysis to see how much of that can we clean up. So that in the end, not only you have nice competitive salaries, but you'll also be able to use those salary ranges in order to compete and hire, competent people. One of the results that we're getting, and it's not a lot, I will say, human resources is doing a very good job, but if department directors or employees don't feel like they're getting sufficient money, we then start doing something about, well, we've added this job responsibility, and so therefore we need to move that person to a new pay grade. So the position really hasn't changed that significantly, but by moving them to a new pay grade, we're going to give them more money. And so HR has tried to hold a number of those off. But I do see a couple of them in there going, there's no reason why you need to have this level. It's the same as the lower level. And of course, the reason is we did something different to the position. The report that will be coming out and that I will present on the 17th, we did look at benefits. I'm not going to talk about that at this point in time. When it comes to health insurance, you're pretty competitive. You are not competitive when it comes to some time off issues. I see you have an issue coming up on your agenda for pay differentials. I am recommending pay differentials. You don't need to wait for me on that. I think, pay differentials are a very different animal than compensation. So I would highly recommend that you look at those pay differentials in human services. That's an area where we're starting to see a lot more pay differentials coming in, regardless of what the pay is. We just can't get people who want to work evenings and weekends. So I would encourage you to move with that, regardless of what happens with the study. And then the other thing we talk about in the report is we're recruiting a different generation. And of course, all of us, they said that about us when we were younger and entering the workforce, but you've got a generation that really is not going into government. Right now, there's a NeoGov article that came out that talked about the silent crisis in government and how government jobs have increased like almost 53%, but there's a 49% drop in applicants to government. And people perceive government as slow, bureaucratic. We don't move things quickly. There's no reason why if a position's approved, do we have to go through 4 committees in order to get it approved? You start doing that and you've already lost your candidate because they can go someplace else. So it's definitely a employee market at this point in time. And one of my clients said we have an employee that we're recruiting that go after the shiny object. The shiny object is next door. I'm going to go to it because it pays more, or it gives me more time off, or it gives me more work-life balance, or it reacts to my needs a lot better than government does. So, I've had this conversation with numerous elected officials. We have to start thinking about how we're going to staff differently because the employees just aren't out there. This isn't, we're in an inflationary period. What we should be seeing, if this was a traditional, normal inflationary period, we should be seeing layoffs, and we're not. And the reason being is we don't have enough bodies to fill the spot. So we're going to continue to be competing with the same small pool of people. And if your department, if your organization can't keep them, they're going to go someplace else. You have almost 480 employees that have less than 4 years of service. And that's a lot. And so the question's going to be is, what are you going to do to keep them? How are you going to keep them there? It costs a lot of money to recruit them. It costs a lot of money to retain them. But if you can't keep them, then you're going to have nothing but a revolving door. So I will stop talking now. We will finish meeting department directors today. By next week, hopefully I will have things done. You may or may not have the salary schedule done for the 17th, but we'll definitely have what the tentative costs are going to be. I don't want to show the salary schedule if we're still making some changes so that people think we did something behind the scenes to them. But our goal is to have everything ready for you on the 17th. Questions?
Yes, Steve, go ahead.
You talked about the 2 raises, like the way ours works is we gave a 4% raise this year. And
Right.
basically new employees can get 7 shares, old employees can get up to 4 shares. So they never can get the full 4%. If we gave a 0.5% per share, they're gonna top out at 2%. Where I see it is that 4% raise should have been strictly on merit. Everybody should have got the 7 shares. And then that second raise would be to help catch up the new employees. I mean, I get more complaints because they basically, there's no way they can get a 4% raise because they can't get 7 shares. So they feel like it's a disparity to them because we worked hard. We got the same review as the new guy. This guy gets 7 shares and I get 4 shares. They don't feel they're being treated fair. And that's where the second raise would come in. That would help because we used to have step raises. Every 18 months, you got a step raise. And it could basically, the supervisor could say, you're not really to that point yet. We're going to give you another 3 months and we'll reevaluate you again. We eliminated the step raises when we went to this merit-based pay scale, and we never did the second pay scale. So instead of having the first one where everybody can get the full 7 shares, which they should, and the second one would be like the step raise, so that the new employees could have an advantage to move up. But until we fix that, there's a disparity, and I don't think our senior employees are ever going to be happy. Like this year, we gave a 4% raise, and most of them got a 2% raise, and the cost of inflation was 8.7%. So,
Yeah.
How are you going to keep employees when we don't basically treat them fairly?
Yeah. And, I don't quite understand your shares type of things, but I also recommended in 2016, you split those increases. Don't give them everything all in January. Not that they don't deserve it, but give the cost of living increase and give that type of increase to the salary schedule in January. Everybody gets it. And then in July, you get the merit increase so that number one, people see the difference between a cost of living and a merit. And then number two, from a financial perspective, you can also spend a little bit more because it's only hitting 6 months of your budget and 6 months of your budget. So I think if you could split those out, you might be able to give more so that you're treating those folks, differently. You're right. It's not a step increase. The nice thing about your salary schedule is that it's a range. And the range doesn't lock you into the boxes. And so if the economy ever tanks, you're not locked to the box. You can say, look, we can't give you what the box says, but we can still give you a 2% or 1.5%. We can still give you something. But I think you need to kind of treat it like a step system where every year that step system increases. And if I was on that step, I got it. And then in July, I get the next step, or in this case, you get the percentage increase. And I have talked with, some of your administration and county exec about saying, I don't know your system very well, but make it simple. Do it where I don't get it. I really get, I get something, or I really get it. And that's all there is. And that way you're not having that disparity perception.
Any other questions? Questions? Questions from the side? Any other questions?
All right, if not, I will see you on the 17th, and the county exec promised no snow because I was born and raised in Wisconsin, lived Illinois for the last 20 years, and now I'm in Tennessee. So please, no snow on the 17th, and we'll see you then.
We can make that happen.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have any feelings over the presentation? Don?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I think it's clear that we're gonna have to take a look at how we're doing our compensation in the county as far as allowing people to move up the range. I think that's the two things that concern me the most about this wage study is, number one, most of our people are, she said, less than 4 years here. So if we get hit by shiny and they all leave, we're in trouble. That's number one. Number two, if we can't move people out of that, and the people that have been here 5 years, if they're not to control point or higher, we don't have that hiring range. We can't use it because we can't hire somebody higher than somebody we've been paying somebody to be here for 10 years. I mean, that's just not that's going to be detrimental to us. So we definitely have something that we need to fix here. As far as going forward, because all we're going to do, if we give people raises and we have a system that constantly pulls them below market, we're going to be in the same situation in 5 years. So we got to figure that out. And I think our employees want us to figure that out. I think it's doable, but it's going to be some hard choices. One of the things that Victoria did mention in a report that we were talking about is the workforce isn't going to get any easier. From our workforce right now, from 55 to 65, and I've said this before, is the same size as 25 to 55. So we have a 10-year gap that's all going to retire in the next 5 to 10 years. That's the same size as the 30-year span behind it. So we have roughly 5 years to figure out how we do this with less people, or we start failing. So, I mean, we have a challenge, and we're gonna have to be competitive, because if we don't have people, we can't do this.
Mark, you got any comments you want to make real quick?
I've been really happy so far with the feedback from department heads. Everyone's been very engaged. We've gotten variety of feedback. Up to this point, as Dr. McGrath mentioned, her team's been assembling the data and trying to crunch that data, so that now that she has that, she's been working on developing what do the adjustments to the schedule look like in comparison to market. And because she's started that analysis, that's where she's been finding that we do have those employees stuck at the beginning within our hiring range. But yeah, we're looking forward to her recommendations and being able to implement some of these changes as soon as possible.
And she's put a deadline on herself on the 17th.
Yes, she'll be presenting. The plan is, I mean, weather dependent, I mean, we don't have a storm, she'll be traveling up here to present at the county board in January.
Go ahead.
And then the idea is that based on those recommendations, any resolutions and actual action items will follow that presentation.
Anybody else? Yes.
I really enjoyed the presentation when she talked about how to separate, January and then July. I mean, that makes so much more sense. It seemed it would be easier on our budget too. Am I wrong? Or,
Um. I disagree with that,
okay,
because you're only getting a 6-month saving once. And then all your budget's gonna come anyways. So in the future, if we're gonna give it to them, let's give it to them January 1. It's less work on payroll, less work in HR, and just make it differentiate. Every employee should get a letter. This is what your cost of living raise was, and this is what your merit raise. We could still differentiate so they can see the difference of the two.
what about retention though? I mean, wouldn't it be more of a retention mentality as opposed to just I mean, maybe I should have said that first.
Sure.
You see where I'm getting at?
Retention's twofold. Number one, making sure that by 5 years, our employees hit control point and they have a clear way to move beyond that. And retention is also when you have that new employee in year 1, that within 5 years, they get to that control point. So that's a retention. And when we have people that sit there at a 0.5%, 1% raise, if that, every year, it's hard to keep people.
So I was thinking retention short term.
Sure.
So I'm thinking you hire someone, you start them at this one salary and then they have this in 6 months. Because it's half a year. That was kind of what I was thinking. We're thinking retention for the newer employees that we're trying to bring on, not just the ones that we have. To have that mid-year carrot.
If that's what the board decides to do that.
They did mention, or she did mention, that there is a double presentation going on. 6 months down the road gives you the merit increase as opposed to the actual wage. So,
Yeah, I just talked with marketing, HR and Mike, and even finance. I think that would put more work on our end. Just to make it clear, and the reason she suggests that, make it clear for employees what's cost of living and what's merit. And I think we can do that all at the same time as long as we communicate that. But having to do that adjustment twice in the system is a lot of work on the back end.
Well, and it's also part of the thing we have to look at too is when we're doing budgets, because by July, we're already have our budget, our labor numbers pulled for the upcoming year. But I agree with what John's saying and with what Dr. McGrath's saying. What we originally proposed back in 2016 was that there would be, whether you call it cost of living or schedule adjustment, there would be an adjustment. And then on top of that adjustment would be any merit raise. Instead, what was amended to was merit only performance. And even with the original proposal, that COLA raise would have still required a certain level of merit to acquire. So it wasn't just an automatic. So for 2023, for instance, yes, we increased the compensation schedule itself, our minimums, our maximum 3%. But unless an employee was hired and paid below the minimum, that 3% isn't applied to each employee. So if you're at the control point and the schedule moves up 3%, you're now 3% below the control point. Well, you're going to get your merit raise, but if your merit raise, is 3%, you're still at the control point. You really haven't moved up. And that's the problem we're running into, is that employees don't get that adjustment, so they don't stay where they are in the range. And it's in essence artificially kept our employees in the hiring range. And now when it comes time to actually hire and make competitive offers, how do we justify hiring a brand new person at more than what someone who's been here 3, 4, 5 years?
How often do we hire people below the minimum?
We don't. We hire people at the minimum, not below.
I think you mentioned though below the minimum.
What I mean is, let's say we hired someone in November of last year at the minimum for 2022. And then in January, that minimum went up because that person hired in November wasn't here long enough to qualify for a merit increase. But we have to move them up now to the new minimum because that's the new minimum. but they're not hired below the minimum, if that makes sense.
What was the share this year worth?
I can't tell you off the top of my head. I want to say around 0.8%. Does that sound about right?
It was 0.9.
Yeah, it gets split up a little bit between 5 different groups, but roughly around 0.8%.
So a person that got 4 shares would have got a 3.2% raise. He couldn't have got a 4% raise.
Correct.
And a person that could get 7 shares got considerably more. You know, and that's where the disparity comes in. If you would have taken 3% of that raise and let everybody have 7 shares and took 1% of that raise and let everybody do the 4 and the 7, at least they would have gotten a chance to get a 3% raise plus a merit raise for their work. But where you throw the whole raise into one pot, it's
Right.
disparity to the employee that's at the midpoint, because the best he was gonna get is a little over 3%. He had no chance of getting that 4% raise.
Right.
And even though we sit on the county board floor and say, we're gonna give you a 4% raise this year, that man didn't have, or woman didn't have a chance to get the 4% raise. And that's where we're basically doing a disservice for employees.
Well, and one, that's why that's not what we proposed in 2016. And then also, just for clarification, the 4% number is what we use from a budgeting standpoint when we just take a look at the overall labor budget and how much is going to be allocated on average. And then either current way solely based on merit determines raise, or in the future, how much is put towards that COLA, and then what's left to put towards merit. But there does have to be obviously some difference, because if everyone in the county got the exact same raise, when you hired someone, there'd never be an opportunity to move up the range.
Right, that's why if you took 3% and gave everybody a chance to get 7 shares, there would still be an adjustment.
Right.
The employee that did a superior job would get the 7 shares, and the one that didn't maybe would get the 5 shares. And then you'd have the 1% to where you could divide that between where they are on this chart,
Right.
between the 4 and the 7 shares. So if you're a newer employee, you could get 7 shares of the 1%, but it wouldn't be such a disparity on the 3%, because that person had no chance of getting the 4% raise that got 4 shares. You know, and it's the new
Right.
employee, basically, he walked away with 5.5%.
Right, and that's the challenge we're seeing with the system we have now, and why we're looking forward to seeing what recommendations.
Go ahead, John.
I think there would be a psychological advantage to doing it twice, and I'm just real happy that we found a problem and a solution that we can fix it, so.
So you're saying that you would like to see a
I
double
would like us to look at it,
twice a year,
yeah.
a raise program would include a secondary.
Just like you said.
Twice a year, John.
I mean, it comes down to, we have 2 people that do payroll for the entire county.
I know.
So it comes down to, can we do it? I would love to do that. If we had enough people, if we could find enough people, hell, do it 4 times a year. But we don't have enough people to do it twice.
So you're saying it can't be done?
I'm saying it'd be really hard, and it'd be I mean, we just lost Jane Hughes, which is our payroll person for 40-some years. Right, right. And wish her well for her retirement. She gave us a great career here. But I mean, it'd be really hard for our team to pull that off.
Well, but let's realize that it's really, really hard for the entire group of employees to live with one pay raise that doesn't cover all their needs for the entire year.
Agreed. And that is up to the board. It's not our compensation plan. It's your compensation plan. So we are doing our best to make sure we bring you the information you need so you can make the best decisions you need. And that's why I asked for us to budget $2 million so we can actually do something with it. Back of the napkin math, we're probably another 2.8 short that we will have to find next year. But we will have to find that so we can be competitive. So we're going to do our best to lay out the roadmap for you. So that you guys can give us the best compensation plan to make Winnebago County sustainable. And we have to find a way to afford it. And I think we can do that.
You hear that? We 5 people have a vote on this as to how we want it to come out. So when this is all shakes out, when it's all done, if we want twice a year or 3 times a year, it's up to us to make the decision. Go ahead.
So, trying to figure out solutions to how we could fix some of these issues. Is it possible to bring in just temporary work to help you in order to help the first year until we can hire someone to help you? And secondly, I don't know what he's talking about when you say shares. So I've never heard that term before. I know lanes and steps, and I know we don't normally deal with those anymore because that's a union.
I know.
What?
We get-
But I need to
we don't
understand
need- I
because,
know, we don't need to get that deep in the
Well,
weeds right now.
oh, I get that, but I'm trying to understand, and I think it's a valid question. And I need an answer because I'm sitting on the board, I'm trying to make these decisions also. So I don't know what that means when he says that, so I'd like to know what that is. And then, steps and lanes, once again. We're not talking in unions here, and I know that's the term I used when I was working on negotiations with the school union, so. I'm not sure that we should be using those terms either, but I don't know what the other thing means, so.
Can we bridge this with
Well, I think you
another
could probably just
study?
explain it to me
with-
super quick and we could get over this.
With another little study over this.
I just want to know what the term is.
And one, I'd be happy to, if you want to connect offline, I can explain in much greater detail and.
What shares
show-
means?
Yep, and show you our system that's currently
Okay.
in place, and I'd be happy to do that.
I didn't know it was a
With any-
complicated thing, so I
with
thought
any-
it was
with any
just a,
board
I thought it was the definition.
Yep. And it would be easier if I could actually show you an evaluation and the matrix and how that works, but
Well, I understand part, but I just didn't
Yeah.
know what the word shares mean.
an employee's evaluation, each year they end up with a
Like
score.
article, okay, I got
So they
you.
get a score,
Okay,
and then based on where they are within the grade. We have, anywhere from the minimum, the control point to the
Right.
maximum, and then based on their score, they will earn a various number of what we call shares.
okay.
And those
Now, I'm with
shares.
that. I
Yep,
know how that all
Yep,
works.
and
I
then you get
just
more
didn't know
shares
that's
if you're at the
that
minimum,
definition.
less at the top.
Gotcha. I just didn't understand what what you were calling it. I just call it something else. So,
Sure.
thank you.
Okay, we good?
Just one more comment, like if you do it twice a year, that means that your supervisors have to evaluate that employee twice a year. So it's not just your Mark that would have to do the paperwork, but how do you basically give that person a merit raise without reevaluating in July and then again in basically December?
The recommendations was the cost of living range would be January 1st, there would be no evaluation attached to that.
So that would be
And
a
then the
straight
merit,
3%
right, that would be a
raise.
straight,
Then
whatever
would
it
be no
is,
merit raise to that.
and then the merit would be separate in July. And we would look at if we could have another payroll to do that, but we have to think of the cost of that as well.
Essentially, you could do it like I was saying, we could have gave a 3% cost of living raise, and we could have did a 1% merit raise, and we could have done it all
Yes,
January 1st
yes,
at one time.
Correct.
Just the way I thought it would work.
yes.
And we will do our best to get together with McGrath and administration to give you the best recommendations possible. And multiple year, what we want to adjust year one with the 2 million we have, what we're gonna have to go after to fix the rest of this problem. And we have a challenge, 3 years, we want to be up to exactly where we need to be. But you did us a great favor by allowing that $2 million to be in that budget this year to give us a great head start. We didn't have that since 2016, so.
All right. Are we all good now? Okay. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Mark. All right, so.
So are we all done with Mark? I got a question for him and then coming out.
We're still in the middle of the wage study, so he's got to get back with department heads, but if you have a question.
No, it was on the social services pay raise. I mean, how? If we're gonna give him a 1% raise, like he's asking from what basically, how are we gonna be fair to the rest of the people?
Well, this is, now you're talking
That's
about,
my question to him.
you're talking about the incentive program that,
I can answer that for him during the discussion on this item.
Carol,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have handed out some handouts to all the personnel and finance committee members about the topics you wanted to discuss today at the meeting. The first handout is the capital project status report. This is included in the county board analysis that I email out every month. Just printed it a little larger, so it's a little easier to read. But Morris had asked to present on the ones that were over budget. So if you turn to page 4, there are 2 highway road projects that are over budget. The first one is County Highway G, which is capital project 4798. They're highlighted in yellow, the amounts that they're over budget. So the first project is over budget right now. It was authorized at 810,000, and the spend as of November 30th was at 1.3 million. So this whole project was funded by borrowing. So at this point, Director Kaiser and myself went out and discussed these projects with Bob and Jill about how we're going to handle them since they're over budget. And most of the reasoning why they're over budget is the cost of materials. So when they were budgeted years back, the concrete and all those different supplies were budgeted at a cost that doesn't exist anymore. So at this point, the plan of attack for that specific project is to go to the committees for additional funding from the general fund. And then if you go down a little bit further, there's County Highway T. That one is project number 4914. This one was budgeted with 100,000 transferred in from the general fund, and 1 million was borrowed. So this project and the one directly underneath it are basically for the same road project. They both were borrowed for. At this point, they're going to hold off on doing any request for a budget transfer to wait until 4916 is somewhat complete and they can actually transfer some money from that project to the 4914 project, different sections of County Highway T. And then whatever they're short for the 4914 will come to committees for a transfer from the general fund. All of the other projects on the status report are within budget, and all of the status and completion timeline comments are in there for you to review. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me.
okay,
And I welcome you to any questions on the capital projects before I move forward to the general fund. Do you have any questions on those road projects? Anything you want to ask Rick, Bob while he's here?
No, I think it's very well done, the way with the detail that's I'm explaining them.
So the next thing that Morris asked me to discuss and present on is our unassigned general fund balance. This report is also available every month in the county board analysis report. And our general fund consists of the unassigned fund balance, and then there's assigned public health fund balance, assigned scholarship fund balance, boat launch, property lister, and jail improvements. So all of those numbers at the top that say audited balance were the numbers at the end of our 2021 audit. And then in the first chunk of changes that say adopted budget, when we load the budget into our financial software, it tells us what our surplus deficit is. So does our fund projection from the actual budget book. So for 2022, in the general fund, we had a budgeted surplus of 90,000. But then we also planned on using 3.1 million of unassigned fund balance to stay within our levy limit. And then when we do our year-end close, we have some items that also use fund balance. So our type 1 carryovers, so that's usually just our land and water transfers that they have contracts for, that they asked to carry the money over from 2021 to 2022. And the next, and in this year, it happened to be that they had more revenue to carryover than expenses. They have both. They have revenue and expenses. So that's why it's a positive number. And then the type 2 carryovers are the purchase order carryovers. So if a department has a purchase order entered into our financial system, it actually carries the budget over automatically through the year-end close process. So we had 539,000 worth of purchase order carryovers. And then the 469 are all of the items that the departments come to type 2 that are not on a purchase order. So they have money that they wish to carry over. They bring all those to you and you approve them at your PNF committee meetings. And then there was another, everything else that's listed underneath, anytime a request is made to transfer from the general fund, it goes on this sheet, and it basically keeps a running total of what the new unassigned fund balance is going to be after all of the budget transfers are put in. So you'll notice in the June area, there's a whole bunch of projects that have an asterisk in front of them. Those are all of those capital projects that we advanced money from the general fund. And then on the flip side, returned it back once we decided to borrow for those projects. So then at the end bottom on the second page, as of November, the fund balance for the unassigned is at 27.2 million. So it's basically saying that we, from the 41 million at the beginning of the year, subtracting the 27 million, that we've used 13.7 million.
Right.
Haven't used, we have applied, because this is all based on budget, moving budget monies. Then the next.
I have
handout right
a question
underneath-
on this.
Sure.
What's our range? Our target range for the general fund?
20 to 25% of governmental activities.
Can you
budget.
give me a number
Let me,
or can you get it to me?
yes, I can, yep, because it's basically you're adding up the expenses for the general fund and VHS's fund for the budget,
Yeah,
and it should be at 20 to 25% of that number.
In my notes. Sixteen to 20% is the target range of unrestricted.
Well, I think 20 to 25 is what we're proposing to change it to, so yeah, 16 to 20 sounds
Yeah.
right.
I just want to know how. And so then- Yes.
Okay.
We'll get a big influx when like human services turns money back, the generator's coming back in the ARPA fund. So there's probably $5 or $6 million coming to this fund sometime in January, February.
John, you've arranged with that with Paul to pull that back from being in the general, taken from the general fund, so that we go to the ARPA fund on these various programs, right?
As soon as they get approved for the county board, and all,
Right.
but yes.
Okay.
My question is, how many of these will be a ARPA fund? And we'll have ARPA fund dollars coming back to it.
That was in the presentation we had the other day on this. And there is a section. Other projects approved or designated as ARPA fund. And you can read through them. You can read them and at the bottom of your.
Back to the general fund balance sheet schedule then at the bottom where it's at the 27 million. So I did want to point out that all of the numbers at the bottom there, both the unassigned fund balance and all of the assigned fund balances at the bottom and all the way to the right, there's 14.699 million. If you actually now look at the next handout, which is the general fund income statement. So this income statement gives you all of the revenues, all of the expenses for every department that rolls into the general fund. If you turn all the way to the back page, And this was done through November, so this is not year-end information. But if you look under the revised budget column on page 11. There's that 14,699,824. So I balance this schedule to our actual financial software every month when I run the report for the county board. So all of those balances are included in that amount. But now if you look over to the year-to-date column, right now it's saying the whole general fund actual deficit is 4.9 million. So we're talking planned fund balance use and actual fund balance use. So as of right now, but then I did run the income statement through yesterday, and it was at an $11.2 million deficit. But 15.7 of them were transfers out from the general fund. So we're still 4 million ahead just in the general fund. Then the next handout, which Janet Roloff provided for us, is talking about the DHS surplus. So Janet did the schedule and basically shows like the labor costs, the travel costs, capital operating by their divisions and what their variance is. And at the bottom, they're projecting just over 4 million. So their projection of what they'll return to the general fund is about 4 million. And then I also attached their income statement through the end of the year, which is as current as we have it right now. And they're showing right now a surplus of 681,000, but they're bringing in more revenues, yet that will still be posted back. So that's why her projection is posted 4 million. Any other questions?
So far. Anything else, Carol?
No, that's all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No,
Thank you.
that should give us a pretty good idea about where we stand with regard to the general fund. So we're on item 5, which is Dr. Topo. Done.
Do you want me to explain kind of the context of this?
Or shares or something. No?
Yeah. Next to Karen.
Maybe it's a little complicated in terms of resolution. Because we're talking about a very small number of positions that will be affected by these things, and a very small number of supervisors. It's not a wide scale change in how we're doing business. We have 2 24/7 operations and human services. They're small by comparison to Parkview or the jail, but we do have 24/7 operations. That means we have to have 3 shifts of people to cover 24/7, 365. And what we're finding, and the problem has been, what we're finding is we can find people to work second shift and find people to work third shift. And this is 7 people each in each facility that we're talking about, that 7 positions that are involved in this. We can find people for second and third shift. However, we find that as quickly as they come, they're either looking for some other position in the county, they're moving to a first shift position, or they're finding something else in the community. So we know by our own experience, we know by other counties' experience that second and third shifts generally have differential pay, meaning that they may get $1 or $2 more an hour for each of those shifts on top of their regular salary as an incentive to stay in those shifts. We don't have that. And we have gotten feedback from employees that have left that had they had differential pay, it would have made a difference in terms of their willingness to stay on second and third. So this came up after the budget cycle. That was a question asked yesterday by our parent committee, Human Services, which voted for it 7-0, by the way. That was a question, like, why didn't we bring this up in the budget process? I would have, had I known at the time that that was an issue. But I didn't, understand that until later in the fall, when we were doing an analysis of what was happening at the crisis center, which we've had operations for several years. We're now adding the kids' shelter care facility. And so that's coming up again, and how are we recruiting and retaining our second and third shift? So the numbers that you see in the agenda item report, which detail it out, basically is if you work during the week, second shift, you would get an additional hour of pay. If you work third shift overnight, you get $2 additional in pay during the week. On the weekend, if you work first shift, you get an extra $1. If you work second shift, you get an extra $1. If you work third shift, you get an extra $1. So in fact, on weekends, you get a little bit more than you get during the week. And that's really to incentivize keeping people in the positions that they're in. And we think that it's going to be effective in keeping people there longer, which means that we don't have to recruit, we train over again and all of that. So one piece of it is the money that's going to be involved in those 7 positions at each of those locations with this extra pay for the entire year. The other part of this is there are supervisors attached to the 24/7 operation at the crisis center, 24/7 operation at child welfare, shelter care, and one for child protective service investigations. There are 3 supervisors. I have 25 supervisors. We're talking about 3. These 3 supervisors not only have to be on call for a call, they actually have to make decisions during the evening and in the early morning hours. They take calls on the average 5 to 10 calls per night. And they have received no compensation. They work all day long, 40 hours. They're on call. They take this number of calls all year long with no compensation. And we are going to lose one of these 3 probably in the next month if we don't change that immediately. The other 2 are saying they're not giving up, but they would certainly like to be compensated to some degree for being on call and actually having to come in if they have to come in. So the second part of the numbers there for a year is that we've estimated if they take on call, it is how much is it on that? For that supervisor, how much do we propose for supervisor just being on call to take
$2 during the week and $3 on the weekends.
$2 an hour?
Right.
Okay, so $2 an hour for the times that they're on call. Should they have to come in, they would get straight time for the time that they have to be available. Right. So we're really trying to not make this wide scale across the board. We're not trying to introduce a different pay system here. You heard Dr. McGrath. I reviewed that with her yesterday. She said that that did not interfere in any way with what she was saying. She made a statement today in support of it. So really, I wanted to convey that we're not trying to do this across the board at every position in the services or every supervisor. That is incorrect. This is a very small, isolated number of people in positions because they're 24/7 related. That's why.
You made the statement to me in our conversation before your committee.
No.
That it would not be a retroactive program.
No,
That
no,
You're
not
not looking back over your shoulder on this for Christmas or whatever.
No.
And it would be an overlay to whatever happens with the general compensation study. Okay,
I mean, if that changed things, we would change it at that time. But this is, my understanding is it's not part of the compensation study specifically. They're not looking at changing. this
No,
specifically.
no, but this would be a general overlay over whatever compensation study does to
Sure.
your, to your very.
The hourly pay for the positions would not change at all. It's just an additional couple of dollars here and there to try to sustain people in the positions they're using.
I'd like to move to approve the pay differential.
I got some questions on it.
We usually.
Wait a minute.
We
wait a
usually
minute,
put on the motion.
we
before
got
we
the-
discuss.
Right. We make a motion, and we second it before we start discussing, and I threw out what I had from the call that I had from you yesterday, so that you had that additional information. Okay, so we want a motion, and second? Second from Steve, motion from.
There's 3 seconds.
Oh, and the additional piece is, there is no fund transfer because we're gonna use it, we're gonna take the money out of our unexpended salary and labor, because we do have a lot of open positions throughout the year. So we're gonna try to do it without a transfer at this point, and then see how that goes. And then, in our next year's budget, we'll factor that.
Any further questions?
My concern is the highway department doesn't get compensated. Like last night, they went out to plow snow. They probably got called out at 1 o'clock. They plowed snow for straight time so that you could get to work this morning. Years ago, when I worked there, we got time and a half when we got called out anytime outside of 7 to 3. And when there's a holiday or the weekend, they're expected to be home. I used to like to go snowmobile. I said, I'm gonna go up north this weekend, and they would tell me that your job is to plow snow in the winter. I got no money to stay home. If it didn't snow, I didn't get called into work. I gave up a whole weekend, so if we're gonna pay call-in pay, then every one of them people should get call-in pay too. I just hate picking and choosing. We start with Parkview giving them some, now we're gonna go here. And it's like, we need to bring this forward and all our workers get treated equally. That's another reason why people don't stay is because they feel that they get treated or slighted. This department gets more than that department. We have one personnel director that should be looking after the interest of all our employees. And I'm all for this. I think that the shift differential is fine. I think they should be get called and paid. But I also think the guy that got up this morning at 12:30 to make the road safe for me should have got some extra pay too. And I think the guy that sits home all weekend.
All right, Steve.
No, I want to hear him. I think he's
Yeah,
got very good points.
I know, and what I'm saying, what I'm getting ready to say is that we do have some incentive programs with regard to the state that we moved on last year.
That's in the summer when they do summer work. They get nothing for plowing snow. And the state would pay time and a half in the winter for them to plow snow, but we took that away from them with Act 10. I just would like to see this addressed as a package and take care of all the employees of Winnebago County. So my proposal would be to lay this over for 1 month, have personnel draw up a plan for all the departments, so they're all treated equally. And next month, I'll be happy to approve it, providing everybody gets the same benefit.
Go ahead.
I'm not willing to do that because, we're gonna lose another person there. I get what you're saying, Steve, but, this is the matter at hand. This is what they need, and we either have to give it to them or they're gonna lose another person. And, then they're gonna have to go out and try to find someone else to cover that position, retrain them, and then also do that. So I think this is the time to look at this, and I am not willing to push it off.
And to add to that,
Was that your motion?
My motion was yes,
And I seconded.
and there's 7 people short right now at the highway department. So those plow drivers have to make that up. They're just as burned out
are
as,
you making an
I made a
amendment?
motion to lay it over till next month for the personnel department to make all departments equal.
We wanna vote on the amendment. Okay. But on top of that, what we're doing is we're daisy chaining a lot of this. We did it with Parkview, we've done it with other entities, and we're starting to get to a point where we're rolling this over to get it involved with some other department. And this is not really another department. We are talking focused on one issue. And that is all we're really focusing on. We want to go any farther with this and make another amendment or another pass at the rest of the company, the rest of the county. We should be writing our own, writing our own program and trying to pass that as a resolution.
Maybe that's what we'll do after Mark restudies it. So
We did, just on the case of Mark, and I'm not talking about your amendment right now. Although probably it should be, but in regards to Mark, we did vet this through Mark as to how this would fit in with other plans in the county to make sure that we weren't, either way out of line with one or the other. So, aware that he's aware of what our plan is, and if he were here, he would tell you that he is in favor of that as well.
Think of me as Mark. If you have any questions for Mark, you can ask me of it. I'm pretty filled in. Motion.
Good.
And I don't disagree with you, Steve, on, the highway department, power snow, and that's. And that's, during the winter months or whatever. I mean, when Dr. Toll brought this to me, I said, I can't believe that we have two facilities that are 24/7 operations. And there's no differentials. They're just getting famous as first shift. And this is the same thing as, I worked at Winnebago for 34 years. And people, and 22 of those as union president up there. But we negotiated differentials, and I negotiated differentials with 26,000 state employees too, for 20 years. But one of the things that came to me was, was there overtime or whatever? Well, why we have to do this? Well, you work in a 24/7 operation. You don't work in a factory. You can't say, well, on the third shift, we don't have enough employees to work that shift. So we're gonna send everybody home, close it up and open up the next day. You can't do that on a 24/7 operation. You gotta have people there. I mean,
Yeah,
so it's,
I truly am not opposed to any of it.
yeah.
All I'm opposed
No,
to is making everybody
yeah.
whole. I agree with you 110%. This is necessary. I think the highway department is necessary too.
Yeah,
And if I tie the two together, we can maybe get them both passed and everybody can get taken care of. And if there's any other departments that have the same situation,
right.
they should be, but that's what we have a personnel director for, is to tell us that we want to make everybody unified. So that we don't say that, why did they do that? They always treat
Something that
them.
we have to do for these two agencies now. I mean, situations now, otherwise we are gonna lose employees.
Well, the highway department lost 7 employees. That's part of life. They're
And
just gonna-
one of the things that was asked yesterday at our committee meeting was, do we have proof or whatever that these differentials do work? And I can say yes. I mean, working at Winnebago, I had people out there for 20 to 25 years on the third shift that worked that third shift for that many years, only because they like that extra compensation. I mean, it's,
Okay,
but I understand.
all right, just a minute. We're not writing policy for the rest of the county. We're doing one thing at a time. If you wanna run it past the highway department or something, we can do something different. But we're not going to take this issue and change it to bring in the highway department and then Parkview and some other. That is not how we're gonna operate.
I made a resolution and my resolution is on the floor with a second. That's what we're gonna vote on, like it or not.
Are you talking the amendment right now? We're supposed to
Yeah.
be voting on the amendment right now.
We're
Motion on the-
discussing- yeah, we're
The motion.
discussing on an amendment
Right.
now.
Postpone.
What would you like to say?
I'd just like to encourage you not to. When we gave the differential for highway from $6 to $12 an hour, we could have said the same thing then. We didn't postpone that. We knew that there was a need there. So we agreed with that. We pushed it through with my support as well to the county board. And I even supported moving it from $6 to $12 and support looking at if we could do it time and a half. I agree with you. I don't think you said anything wrong, but postponing this a month for that. When we didn't do that with highway, we pushed that through. We didn't do that with Parkview with their differentials on their 24/7. We didn't do that with the $3 that we gave to the sheriff. I think to make that stand now, after we've already approved these multiple things before it, would be wrong. And I would encourage you, please, to take action on this now. And I can give you my word that we are coming for the entire county to make things right for everybody.
I'll hold you to your word. I'll withdraw my resolution.
Thank you.
But I'm gonna hold you to that, John, because I don't wanna see them highway out there working all night and getting out one extra dime. When I plowed snow at night, I got time and a half. And the state would pay that and the other counties pay it. So I just don't wanna see our employees being mistreated by one department that comes and asks for something, they get it. And maybe our highway commissioner, he didn't come to us to ask for it, so his employees don't get it. I want everybody to be treated fair in this county. So I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank you.
The amendments withdrawn.
You can hold me to that.
The amendments withdrawn. Okay, and we are now voting on the main amendment or the main resolution. I'm sorry.
Yes,
The implementation pay differential for 24/7 operations at the crisis center and child welfare, shelter care, as well as for 3 child protective service investigative supervisors. That has to be changed on line 4 as a friendly amendment.
Line 31. So there was a friendly amendment.
Line 4 in the resolution and line 31,
Oh, yes, sorry.
okay? So as I read it, that's what we're getting ready to vote on now, okay? Everybody ready? Let's have a vote.
Yes,
Aye, 4-1.
May I be
That was. Yes. That's the end, Steve, scared the motion and seconded it. Thank you. Okay, we're on item 6. But Sheriff Matt's left and you're taking his place.
Yes, you have me now.
yes,
Sorry about that. It's gone too long.
So I know I'm a new face, so my name is Tyler Sleeter. I'm a lieutenant in the sheriff's office. Additionally, one of my duties is I'm assigned to our SWAT team. Been on SWAT team for 12 years, currently as a team leader. So what I'm here to discuss today is a grant that we applied for in October and we were awarded in November. It's for $3,600 from the Wisconsin Emergency Management Alert SWAT program.
Tyler, your last name again?
Sleeter, Sleeter.
SLEEETER.
Freezing rain, ER.
always.
Okay. All right, we're good to go here. We did have a review of this in the agenda, agendized item.
Can I move to approve this resolution?
We got a move and a second by David. Betsy, you. Okay, any questions? Okay. Want to vote?
Aye.
Aye. Fine.
Thank you very much.
There we go.
Matthew's been replaced.
Okay, we're on item 7.
Tell the sheriff to send you every time.
Item 7 is a budget transfer to the Parks Department of $15,000, and we have Mr. Bress.
Thank you very much. So a memo within the agenda packet, kind of went through it a little bit, but the expo, over the last year and a half, since I started, I've noticed we have a lot of chairs and tables that haven't been replaced in many, many years. And then with the added burden of not burden, but the added use with the health department out there as well, with tables and chairs on a constant basis. We have had quite a few events where we've run out of tables and chairs, whether it's due to the quality of the chairs with them being duct taped, or tables with them being duct taped, or whether it's just the sheer number. So we're looking to replace some of our tables and chairs, and then in the future, work on a better replacement plan to replace a limited amount each year to basically replace broken ones, because there really wasn't a plan in the future on that. Just to kind of give you an example, this year I just, this was not in my item report, but to date, last year, we charged for rental of chairs and tables. There's a rental fee and then there's a charge for tables and chairs. We had 13,000 in revenue from the tables and 9,900 in revenue from the shares. So the return on investment is there. But we just need to replace some of them, we need to increase the amount that we have out there.
I'd like to move to approve the budget transfer.
I'll second.
And we've got Betsy to approve. David. I'm sorry, Stephen. For a second. Got any discussion at all? It would seem to me that it would be a good idea to get rid of all those broken ones, or the ones you've got taped up. That's a safety problem.
Right.
Okay. So we want to vote.
I,
Aye. We got 5. Good. Thank you. Adam.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and we've got another budget transfer. This is highway department. Mr. Demo.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We're asking for the purchase of a P1 player. What this will do is at our highway department for, it's a menu board. And what it'll be able to do is with our daily work assignments, everything has, all our jobs have work orders. And on that work order is a project number. So everything has an assigned work order and project number. And with our new electronic timekeeping, in order to keep the guys that they're getting their assignments every day, what this will be able to do is employee will come in, be able to look at that monitor, every employee's name will be on there, the job assignment, where they're going. So it'll help us with the daily assignments, assigning jobs out there. The superintendents won't have to meet with everybody individually to be able to meet with the foreman, but all that information will be on that menu board. Just to expedite the guys getting them going in the morning on job assignments. You know, if they're working, you know, we're 24/7, so if people come in, they can just look at that board and they'll know what they're to make their times out. All the information will be on that. So that's what we're asking for them.
I'd like to move to approve the budget transfer.
Got any questions?
Comment, I think it'll be basically way more efficient. I mean, sometimes it would take 20 minutes to get our job assignments, you know, depending on how many and how complicated they were. Now you're gonna look at that board, and when you punch in, you're gonna look at the board, and at 7 o'clock, you're gonna go out and start your job. So I think you're gonna actually save probably 20 minutes a day, so it's money well spent.
Yeah, it will. I mean, like when we have our large paving projects, we may have, you know, 20 to 25 crew members on a crew. You might have 15 of those that are just driving truck. So all they're doing is they just need to know what truck and where they're going. All that information will be there. So they can, those 20 people can just be out the door. And then that communication can be directed to that foreman of what's going on those jobs. So yeah, it's just efficiency and to help us out a lot.
Yep, I think it'll work really good.
Okay, who got the second on that? Okay,
I have a question.
go
And I
ahead.
realize it's not on the. What was the accident on Highway 41 before 9th Street this morning?
I'm not sure what it was. Sure.
Yes.
Any other questions?
I've worked the road in 7 years, so.
Any other questions? Okay, we vote.
I,
Aye. Okay, 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, we've got accommodations, and we've got 8 accommodations, and I think we ought to take them all. Unless you have questions on any of them,
do we do it all at once?
we do them all at once. Okay,
I'd like to, for me to say them. I'd like to move a resolution for commendation for Stephen Brewer, Daniel Hinton, James Hughes, Daryl, Darren Holzer, Andrew Ray, Greg Roth, Teresa Nuck, I'm thinking, and Karen Witt.
Second.
And a second from David. Okay, let's vote.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Okay, David, before we do an adjournment, we need to know our next meeting date, and I believe we decided that last month. It's going to be, what did I do with my?
The 8th.
It's gonna be the 8th, right?
Yep.
Okay, so February 8th. David,
Move to adjourn till February.
Second.
that's it in a second. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, with the sheriff.